invited to speak for a group of people in Edinburgh, in Scotland. And the evening before the event was to take place, a group of us went out for a drink in a really cosy little bar on a very cold evening, October evening in Edinburgh. And while I was there, one of my fellow speakers, I got chatting to him. Now, I was aware of this guy's work anyway, and it's one of those kind of occasions in life where you just meet somebody and you click. And it was quite amazing. It was clear that we had so many areas of commonality, both in terms of ethnicity, in the sense that although I may have these dulcet English accents, I'm actually sort of Irish Welsh by background, and a lot of my family came over from Ireland about 100 years ago or so, and it was wonderful to actually speak to this gentleman, Thomas Sheridan, and Thomas was kind enough to give me one of his books that he had recently published, called Defeating Demons. And I read this, and I was staggered, because an awful lot of my own writing in this area, Thomas was very much picking up on in a very, very different way. And it resonated with me, because I thought, he's coming from a totally different angle to myself, but he's coming to similar conclusions to myself. Just hold on, that was Windows telling me it wanted to update. We're having this kind of day today. Dia has had similar problems at the moment, my producer over there in Denver, but we're just going to ignore the demons. They're trying their damnedest to actually make this not happen, but we will defeat them. Now, Thomas, I know something about Thomas, but I don't know a great deal about his background. He's a bit of an enigma. I know that he's a very, very talented artist. I know he used to be a rock musician. From checking his website, I'm aware of the fact he worked for a time in New York. He does this wonderful analysis of New York and the buildings in New York and the gargoyles in New York, which we'll touch upon later. So without further ado, Thomas, welcome to the show.
I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, right. Now, can you fill in some of the mystery details of yourself and a little bit about your background? Because I'm very, very intrigued. I'm a huge music fan myself, and I'm very, very intrigued as to your background and a little bit of your journey and how you ended up where you are now.
Well, it's a bit mad. I grew up in a high-rise council estate in the north side of Dublin, which doesn't exist anymore. It was knocked down about 15 years ago, but it was a pretty notorious part of the city. Really bad for drugs. It was where the movie The Commitment was set, and then they knocked it down. But no, I hadn't have a bad life or anything there. It was just what it was, a council life. But it was tremendous cultural opportunities there. Everybody seemed to be in a band, and amazingly, had a lot of kind of educating, interesting friends. And from a very early age, I had the circle of kind of punk rockers who were metalheads who were reading Lovecraft and Dennis Wheatley, and even books on actual practicing real magic. And I became interested in all kinds of Fortean and esoteric subjects. And to get out of Ireland at that time, and to get out of England I was in, I started playing in bands, and just through circumstance, I went over to New York with a one-way ticket, $200, and I was 19, and a guitar, and not kidding, a few months later I was playing at CBG. It was that mad. I landed completely on my feet in the Lower East Side kind of alternative industrial goth scene, and it was brilliant, it was magical, it was amazing, and it was everything you think it would be at that time. It was a funny time in the music scene there, because it was kind of the glory days of New York had kind of gone, the days of Ramones and Blondie and that kind of scene, and I hadn't caught up again with this thing with Sonic Youth and bands like that. So it was kind of a weird period in the middle where there was a kind of a very interesting scene that existed in New York, and it was again I found that all these people that was incredibly interesting. We read books, we had conversations. I would tell people that long before there was ever conspiracy theories, the coolest thing you could be in the Lord. All the cool people in Manhattan back in the day used to talk about conspiracy theories. And used to talk about weird and strange and Fortean things. It was the normal discourse among these kinds of people. It only became uncool later. And then I had to get a job, and I had studied in Ireland I was a mad, and I still am a mad analog electronics nuts. I didn't find, I found college very difficult, I was very unhappy, I was very isolated, I felt very lonely, and I dropped out after a year, then I went to New York. Then I decided to go back as an adult student, but I wanted to learn graphic design, and I paid my way as a night student. I was working in bars and construction sites during the day, and I became a graphic designer, had a great time, just as American banks and big business were getting very savvy about communications and graphics. And then I ended up working in Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Nunez and Consult, you name it, I worked in them all, making very good money and having a great time. That lasted for a while. I came back to Ireland and I said I want to be an artist full time, and that worked out for a while until the economy here crashed in 2008, like it did all over the world. The art business had the legs torn off it. And then I said, you know what, I'll finally write that book on psychopaths, because I've been interested in psychopaths through interest in serial killers. I was very interested in serial killers and cults in New York, and it was through reading criminal profiles of serial killers that I realized that big business, and to a certain extent modern society, is a kind of a serial killer. It's psychopathic, at least in that sense. And I started making videos on the internet, and they took off really fast, and then I wrote a book called Bestselling People, and it just, I thought I was going to sell like 5 or 6 copies to my friends, and it became a huge success. It gave me a career as a writer. I didn't get rich or anything, and you know yourself, you don't get rich when your books sell well, but it was enough to give me an alternative way of living. And ever since then, the goodbye to Nunez Network, that's how I live. I write a bit, I have a part-time job at the weekends, I sell the odd bit of art when I can, and I make a little bit off the internet and stuff like that. So I'm very grateful for that, because it gave me a life that's, although it's not financially secure and when something goes wrong in that sense, like in having a regular job, but I have an awful lot of freedom. And that's basically my story.
I have to agree with you totally there in terms of the way in which writing gives you that freedom. Like yourself, I spend 6 months of the year working as a management consultant. In fact, at the moment I'm working at the National Gallery in London, which in itself is fascinating. Like yourself, I'm fascinated by art. And I was many, many years ago when I did my PhD in art history on the paintings of Giordano, but that's a whole alternative story, and my life could have taken a whole different route. But effectively, your life was so exciting. You were in New York just at that time. And I am reminded, of course, of one of the guests that's been in the show in the past, who I think we're both very aware of, was Gary Lackman, who was the original guitarist with Blondie. Now, I've always thought what an inspiring time that would have been, because I always felt that punk rock, new wave rock in America was far more intellectual in its roots and far more anarchic in its roots in many ways than the UK version, which tended to be slightly different, whereas there was this deep intellectual background to a lot of the things they were talking about. And I would imagine that it would have been a wonderful place to be. Now, before we move on, one of the things that you mentioned in one of your blogs, which really stuck out at me, was when you were working at Goldman Sachs or wherever it was in Lower Manhattan, and you were looking at the other skyscrapers, and you noticed the way in which gargoyles seem to have very much a theme within the buildings. Now, I don't know if you've actually read my book, The Infinite Mindfield, but in this I discuss an awful lot of the architecture in Lower Manhattan, and the way in which an awful lot of it was by one guy who was, and I can't remember his name now, but he used to design Masonic lodge halls all around America, and there's a lot of symbolism in the buildings there. But your comments about the gargoyles really intrigued me. So can we just go off on a tangent a little bit about your thoughts on that? What stimulates that? What do you think you found in terms of that?
Well, you probably know from talking to me and reading my stuff, is I have a very healthy dislike for Christianity and Abrahamic religions. And a lot of that, the darker aspects of things like Catholicism, I'm not putting down, if someone has their religion, that's their own business. I'm not telling you you're right or wrong, it's your life. But I'm just saying that the darker elements of Catholicism were definitely borrowed from Babylon. In terms of things like gargoyles, if you look at the spiritual history of Babylon. It was a culture literally saturated with demons and demon worship. In fact, their gods were demons. And there was every kind of ritual for a demon. Now, demons were often associated with the circumference of buildings. Now, that's very interesting because then terms like things like magic, you have the idea of the threshold or the magic circle protecting the internal space. The idea was to keep the demons on the outside of the homes, so they believed they used to make effigies of wax and red and put them outside. They believed there was a demon in the house, they would trap it in an effigy of wax and red, put it outside, and hope the sun or the rain destroyed it. Now, this was eventually incorporated into the Gothic cathedrals of Europe. In fact, before that, it was incorporated into the state churches of Norway, those magnificent wooden churches that look like almost like Chinese pagodas that you get in Norway. And the idea is the real thing at work here is that when you see those gargoyles, your mind subconsciously goes into a state of fear. But when you go inside a Gothic cathedral or a bank built in Manhattan or Chicago in the 1920s, you don't see them, and you're often shown beautiful internal vistas. And inside of cathedrals have incredible, beautiful stained glass. So your subconscious mind has a sense of salvation. The demon on the outside, inside is salvation. And also when you go into buildings like the Chrysler building in Manhattan, the Chrysler building in Manhattan, and you see these quite terrifying, but also quite a beautiful stylistic Art Deco gargoyles on the outside. You go inside, those buildings are gorgeous. They're built on most lavish materials of woods, mahoganies. Every detail is gorgeous. So it's the same idea. Your subconscious mind sees a sense of terror. You enter into this magic circle where you're provided with salvation, either in terms of spiritual or religious salvation or financial salvation. And this guy who built these Masonic lodges, of course, these guys know these things, and that's why they built those skyscrapers like that in Chicago, New York, and Philadelphia in the 20s and 30s.
Fascinating, because one of the things I've always been intrigued by is that the incredible ornate, particularly the Chrysler building, is beautifully ornate. And again, I was very surprised when I first went inside the Empire State Building to see just how Art Deco it was, and how from the outside it did somewhat sparkle, but from the inside it has this incredible beauty, the resonance of it. But of course, I mean, in many ways, the symbolism of New York itself as a principle is fascinating. But it seems to me from reading your material that it was probably in 2010 when you had an event with a Congolese shaman that seemed to not change your world, but very much focus it. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, he was a Nilotec shaman from Western Africa, which are kind of similar to the Maasai. And when he told me that's what he was, I was at an event in Dublin. It was just as a customer. It was a kind of a consciousness, spiritual, new agey kind of event, and I didn't really know a lot about those things really. And someone suggested me a bit good see to talk to people about my own book, which is coming out. And I got told this dude with his wife, and he looks like a film star. He's just like 10 feet. I'm not joking. He was 7 feet tall. He had very handsome. He was just like really. I don't know. He had this incredible energy about him, his beautiful wife and everything. And he just sees me and he smiles, and the smile was like a floodlights in a stadium going on. That's the only way I can describe it. And he comes over and he talks to me. He's drinking pints of Guinness at the bar, and that's why he said one of the reasons he came to the event, because he wanted to taste Guinness of Ireland stereotype. But I got talking to him and he told me that that's what he was. He was he was involved in shamanic work in Africa, and he goes around doing conferences and stuff like that. He told me his name, but I wish I remembered. But it was not like it was a typical like Maasai type surname. And that's what I was into. And I said, well, I'm gonna have a book on psychopaths coming out. And he just stopped and he lit up and he said, "Oh, I know all about them." He goes, "That's a demon world trying to invade this world," and that's always stuck with me.
That in itself resonated because one of our earlier guests, a guy called Eno, who runs in Boston, he has a very, very popular web-based podcast and everything else as well. And And interestingly enough, he's an ex-Catholic priest, and he trained to be a Catholic priest. And I think because he was interested in the occult, or interested in ghosts and similar things to that, he never finished becoming a priest. And he was telling me in a previous interview that we've done on this show that he and his friends were up in a place somewhere, I think, in New Hampshire or somewhere where there used to be very strong Welsh communities there. And they came across entities, very, very powerful entities that were there. And he concluded, and the basic thesis of his work now, is that there are other entities that break through into this reality who have their own interests, and they are extremely dangerous. Now, up until now, it's an area I've never really, it's not an area I've not been interested in, because rather like yourself, I've been interested in the occult since I was 10 or 11 years of age, from reading Man, Myth and Magic onwards. And indeed, when I went to university, I focused in on the sociology of religion and the sociology of language, because I was very interested in these subjects. But it seems that sometimes modern science is getting it somehow wrong, that there is this worldview that, because it doesn't fit in with the present scientific paradigm, it is literally ignored, and that there is something out there that could potentially be dangerous. And I know that you have a similar problem to myself in terms of these hardline skeptics, who, as you call them, hardcore skeptics, who really don't seem to get it. They seem to miss it a little bit. So we could probably come on to that a little bit later. But what are your ideas on, you can talk for as long as you like now, because this is the area, the central theme of your work, is what have you discovered about these entities? What is your interpretation of them? And what do you think is effectively going on? So you have all the time in the world to talk about this, because I know this is the central thing of your work. So fire away.
Well, they exist. That's the fact. I know there may be people listening to this and saying they don't exist, but I've seen them, I've encountered them, I've summoned them, and what they are, I don't know. Okay, that's my honest opinion. Now, what I can tell you about them is that the belief in them is absolutely universal. For instance, in Ireland, the fairies and the demons, it's only Hollywood who's made fairies into Tinkerbell. I mean, Irish country folk would have went to enormous extents to have not had an encounter with a fairy. The fairy and the demon and the grey alien today, and the Pentagamon of Indonesia, the Lamia of ancient Greece, you go on and you go on and you go on. It's the same thing. Now, when I say I don't know what they are, I don't know, and this is the truth, Anthony, if they're separate from us, citing your own work on the daemon there, or if they're some kind of aspect of ourselves. Within the Irish folklore tradition is something known as the fetch, F-E-T-C-H, and what it is a belief in a doppelganger, that everybody has a doppelganger, and this doppelganger can actually look like you, or it can behave like you, and this doppelganger has a pathological interest in damaging you. So you may see someone who looks just like you, and even by seeing someone who's identical to you on the street one day, it unhinges you, it can damage you. Now, that may have been very effective in a more ancient time, or not even ancient, but a less sort of technologically inclined time, where people didn't travel as much. So could you imagine, say, in a village in England or in France or anywhere, and suddenly seeing, where you'd never traveled much really, you haven't been outside a 20-mile radius, and then one day encountering somebody who looks just like you, and the effect that would have on your psychology and and your sanity. And then you could take that to another level, and this fetch could actually incorporate itself into another person that would enter into your life, and this is where the psychopath idea comes in, would enter into your life to basically address the ghosts in your soul, things that were missing in your personality, or things that you had problems with. You had a difficult childhood, you were abused or something, or you came out of you had a failed marriage, and this person came along and seemed to be the cultural personal, psychological, antidote to that. But really, what it was almost like later on, it would always turn into a horrible experience. And when you look back upon it, at this pathological or psychopathic individual, you say to yourself, it was almost like they had studied me when I was growing up and then jumped into my life. And that could be another way it's expressed in a sort of a material, personal form. But they absolutely do exist. But I can tell you for a fact, and this is extremely important, they will manifest or they will appear to you in a culturally relevant form. So if you live in the time of gargoyles and, sort of like, Middle Ages demons, they will appear looking like that. They this is why chaos magicians can summon Lovecraftian type entities like Cthulhu and Yog-Sothoth, because they can actually manifest what they're expecting. And this shows the power of the human mind. It's almost like the consciousness of this other entity encapsulates it in a format to which you can understand it, or you can dress it, or you can expect it. So in Ireland you get a fairy, in Scandinavia you get an elf, this kind of thing. Today in California you get a grey alien. In fact, Crowley said that. He said today we call them demons, tomorrow we will call them something else. And if you look at, say, the great alien abduction stories, they are absolutely identical to abduction stories by the fairies in Ireland. The same thing, this resentment of humans, this examining them, putting things in their bodies, a sense of general disarray in the fairy world. Often, like people like Whitney Strieber in his own books have described the inside of, quote unquote, UFOs or spaceships as being places that were deeply unhygienic and very, nasty and disheveled, this kind of thing. They do exist. They absolutely do exist. The big question for me is, are they us or are they them? And I think I'm moving more and more to the idea that they are perhaps us. They are perhaps us in a different format. And why they exist, or how they exist, or how they came to be, I don't know. But the fact that they generate themselves in a visual context, in complete compatibility with our cultural expectations, our contemporary cultural expectations, absolutely suggests to me that they are a part of us. That's basically it.
You mentioned that you yourself have manifested these things. Are you willing to share with us what happened, or the circumstances of what you actually manifested, and how indeed, within simple terms, how you managed to do that?
When I was 14, I had a book on, and I had a grimoire on some of the demons, and I was in the council flat that we lived in, my friend's house, and in the living room, and we performed the ritual as it was described in the book. And the four corners of the room settled into absolute blackness. Now, when I say blackness, I mean all visual matter had left. Now, this is important for your own work as well, because we can talk about this later in regards to how we can actually, make the quantum field malleable. But that's what the magical, looking back on it now, that's what the magical ritual was doing. It was making the quantum field around us malleable through intense focus of our will. Probably the fact that we were going through puberty and full of all kinds of hormones and that kind of thing, coupled with the fact that these were all very intense teenagers I was involved with in a house where my friend, I found that later, had been sexually abused by his uncle. So all the things had worked to make this happen. We panicked and ran because we had a sensation that there was something in the darkness that was trying to reach us. This is how invocations of demons and spiritual magic happens. You literally collapse the quantum field around you through rituals and through conjurations and through these kinds of concepts. And then you see them, then they come forth. Initially they will show themselves up as pools of water that mysteriously appear around your house, voices you hear in your pillow. They're not coming from your head. It's often sometimes coming from the walls and in the ground, speaking these archaic languages. They could be you messaging with yourself, or they could was screaming, get off, get off, get off, get off. And I wake up, and then an hour later, and then I think to myself, that was one horrible dream. That was the worst nightmare I've ever had. I go upstairs to have my morning wash, and my back is all covered in bruises and welts. Whether that was psychosomatic, or whether I actually do believe this thing that did attract me. And that was the beginning of me no longer. I was actually quite a skeptical teenager. Even when we were doing those magical rituals as kids, I was saying, oh, it's hallucinations. It's like LSD or something. It's not really happening. But that was the thing that broke my kind of like early reductionist. I was a very intense teenager, very well read. I was constantly reading quite, science books, quite in-depth science books, and I was very interested in things like electronics and stuff like that. So I was not like a flaky kid, but that was a big deal for me, and it was a life-changing moment. Another time, which I don't think I've ever talked about on the radio before, was in 2010. I became very ill. I almost died. And my gallbladder had become ruptured, which is quite a common thing. But what happened was something had gone wrong, and it created an infection, and the infection was spread to my liver. And so I was basically dying, and I was rushed to the hospital. And I mean, they cut these chunks of my body out, like literally scooped me out, and I was lost huge amounts of blood. And excuse me, I started what I thought at the time was hallucinating, but I wasn't. I was seeing these creatures walking around the hospital. Like, they were children with huge eyes, and they were very interesting things at the end of my bed. Now, they were not like, visions like mists or something. They were solid, but they looked like those. You ever see those back in the 70s? They had those big-eyed children, those wilderness things. They were like big-eyed children, like little kids are popular like cultural of Ireland in the 70s. They looked like that, but they were scruffy and dirty. And this was in the hospital. People were around it. I was seeing them. No one else was seeing them. And then I had this a remarkable vision of being inside a dome, and the dome was full of all the archaic writing of the world, including things like Hebrew and even our own runes, and written in red inside the dome. And I came out of that and thinking, oh my God, they're giving me some drugs and messed me up. First, I'm completely lucid because I was talking to my friend on the phone, describing this as happening. And then, this is the truth, it happened, it took place. The Egyptian god Sobek, that not 5 feet tall, was, and I didn't even have any interest in Egyptology or anything, was standing in the hospital room at the end of my bed, looking at me with absolute contempt. And it was not a hallucination, like a vision or a mist. These were solid objects I was seeing. And I believe that the sheer trauma of me having to suffer so much pain, coming to the edge of death, feeling very bad about my life at that time, I was going through a bad depression. I literally smashed reality up in one of these archetypes. So that's been my experience. They were not like this. I've had my brain checked. I have a very good brain. I don't have temporal seizure or anything like that. And it was real. It was real entity, and it was not an hallucination.
There's a term you use in your own work. There's a term you use in your own work which is very similar to, again, what my American friend uses. The term psychic vampires. And it's as if they seem to, are attracted to, or seem to feed from negative feelings, negative thoughts, illness, these type of things. What's your thought on that?
Well, absolutely. I think some of them are actually passive. They don't actually mean it. I think the psychic vampires in the world don't actually mean to do it. I think they're actually, I know people who I go visiting in their house, and they're usually feel like run a marathon after having a cup of tea and they're on chat with them. Train the village. Their house always smells cold. They came into my place would feel cold. And yet they were decent and nice people. They were not pathological in any kind of malicious sense. And yet that's what they could be like. I think psychic vampirism is almost like it stresses a imbalance within someone's consciousness. Whereas I know one thing that these people all had in common is they were not
Did we lose you, Anthony Peake?
Tom, I've lost Thomas. I'm still here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thomas, are you there? Greetings, family, and welcome to the Anthony Peake Consciousness Hour. This is Dia Nunez with the H20 Network. I know that you're not used to hearing my voice because I am the producer of this beautiful show, but exactly what Thomas and Anthony have been discussing and speaking, we have been experiencing. We lost Thomas, and now I just have Anthony and I on the line.
Yeah, absolutely. Dia and I know this happens on a regular basis when we try to do this show, and it happens far too often. And with losing Thomas just at the point where he was about to make some very, very interesting comments, including telling us things that he never actually shared with other people. But on top of that, we have this very weird feeling that we sensed, both Dia and I both sensed, we're going into dangerous areas here. It's going to get cold. And this is exactly what happened. Now, it could be coincidence, but, how many coincidences do we need here for things to be going quite strangely? And the thing is that, Dia, you explained you tried to contact Thomas now, haven't you? Some quite strange things happening there.
Well, I just rejoined our call, and it's like dead silence. It's white noise. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to hang up with you, and then I'm going to call Thomas individually, which I do. And I can see visually that he has picked up the phone, but there's like literally no sound. And then the phone hangs up. And I just laugh because I know what that is. I mean, me and you have talked about this and we joke about it, but Thomas has actually written about it, and he's not the only one to write about it. It's when you begin to talk about these really deep-seated topics and subjects that there's interference involved because they don't want you to talk about and bring things up under the surface to the surface. We've been doing this for how many years, Anthony?
About 8 years, something like that.
Yeah, almost a decade. So, I mean, we've had some strange experiences, and your audience, of course, obviously knows in mine that we record under all means that's necessary. But this is, like, really strange.
Well, one of the things we were going to be discussing, and I was going to be asking him about, was the idea of how magic and the occult can soften reality and make it more valuable. As Thomas pointed out, that it seems that sometimes, I mean, it could be, for instance, that all three of us were thinking the same thoughts at the same time, creating what the occult calls an egregore, almost a thought form, and we've managed to make it collapse because we were expecting it to happen. Now, within sociology, something called the sacred warp hypothesis, which was actually featured in the movie Arrival, which quite surprised me. And the sacred warp hypothesis, that language and thought somehow manipulate external reality. Now, if we take quantum physics as literally as it is, the idea is that subatomic particles do not exist until they are observed and measured. So therefore, a subatomic particle effectively is a statistical wave probability until it is measured and observed by ultimately a consciousness. Now, this means effectively that reality, if it's not being observed or measured, doesn't exist. So could it be that when we collectively think things, these things come into fruition? Now, again, I'm not looking to go out there bouncing down saying this is new age wacko nonsense. And I suggest no, it's not. You look into the writings of people like Max Born and the founding fathers of quantum physics, and you will discover that these are not. They are strange and weird, but they are very much elements of how nature is showing itself to be, or the part of nature that wants to show itself to be. So, what can we make of all this? Well, all I can say is that it seems self-evident that something either we subconsciously or something else did not want this interview to proceed. Or it could just be, as the critics will say, and the skeptics will say, that was stupid. It was just a problem with the system. It was adverse weather conditions in Ireland or in West Sussex down here. Well, here's a message, guys. There are no adverse weather conditions down here at all. We have had no snow, whereas the rest of the country have had snow. And also, Thomas was telling me it's been the same in Ireland, where he is. The weather conditions are fine. So it doesn't make it. He's now messaging me now, and he's going, damn, I am here anyway. So he clearly cannot get through.
Wow. Yeah. But it's exactly, I mean, I know what this is. We've experienced it way too much. And, it's interesting how people call things New Age when in medieval times, the people who were the scientists were actually occultists. I was listening to an astrologer last night where, this conversation that we're having actually coincides with everything else that we talk about when it comes to consciousness. It's like the truth is really right in front of our faces. They were talking about quantum physics back in the day when they were talking about astrology. Astrology was science and vice versa. And I think that secretly they tell us like these little portals or these combinations of things open up portals to other things. I mean, there are 3 people on the line. That's a portal way. In Christianity, they talk about the Trinity. That's a portal way. Astrology, they talk about Mercury. And Mercury going backwards. What does that really mean? What is that opening up a portal to? Do you understand the connection?
Oh yeah, totally. The idea that there is a great deal of fallacy. We believe, as all civilizations have done, that we've got it sussed. That everything we understand about the world is absolutely correct, 100%. And other civilizations just got it completely wrong. That is completely ridiculous. It's not the way it is. We know that in 100 years' time, people will look back on our science and will say, they got it completely wrong. I mean, I'm reminded of the famous quotation, which I've used many, many times, Michelson-Morley experiments. I think it was about 1896. He was opening up a new wing of the University of Chicago, and he paraphrased somebody, an English scientist, and he said, we've got very little now to learn about science and physics. We only need to now be honing things to the 6th decimal point. And of course, in December 1900, a certain gentleman called Max Planck came along and gave a speech in Berlin where he stated that the only way he could explain some of the effects he was discovering in physics was to actually suggest that light worked in a wave function, and that part of the light and everything else was quantized, that they weren't continual. And effectively, that was the whole start of a whole new science. But the vast majority of people out there are completely and utterly unaware of this. Now, again, I have to ask the question, how is it that the vast majority of people do not know about quantum physics? They touch upon it, but they really don't go into the detail. They don't know. Is it because we're not supposed to know? There was a couple of writers a few years ago, Californian writers, both of which were professors in physics at universities in California. Guys called Rosenbluth and Kuttner. They brought out a book on consciousness and physics. And in the introduction to the book, they turn around and they say that they're associates. They said, you're going to lose tenure for doing this because you cannot get this out in the general psyche. You cannot let people know this because it's like giving people instructions to a nuclear bomb. They were so terrified. They said, yes, we know it doesn't make any sense. We have to have people believe that we know what's happening. Our science is an equalist science at the moment. We don't know dark matter, we don't understand dark energy, but we pretend we do. And this is because we are suffering from delusions in terms of this. There's a real science, and the real science can only be explained when we include all experiences, the experiences you have had in your life, the experiences Thomas has been describing, my recognitions in my life. These are experiences. We cannot even begin to explain consciousness in the way. This is it. We really need to be moving forward with some completely new ideas.
I mean, to be honest, Anthony, with all ego aside, we really don't know what consciousness is. Let's just keep that real. We really don't know what it is. Like, really. We have all of these experiences. They're only looking at half of the burrito. And it's interesting when we talk about quantum physics because I was talking to a scientist. I do a lot of tech and science people because that's exactly what I love. My dad is amateur astronomer. When you talk about quantum physics, it's almost like the new age version version of science, and you're just looking at them like, wow, really? So it's almost like the community, not as a whole, because there are people breaking through that slowly but surely, have created this wall. It's like almost this fear of walking into the unknown. It's like, wow, we created all these theories and we have to like really rearrange and change things. And then there's a whole other set of people in the scientific community who they're doing some really revolutionary things that are mind-blowing. And in the next 10 years, not 20, 10, it's just going to be amazing the things that they bring to the forefront, or at least try to, because a lot of things are suppressed. You talk about science, deep science with people, and it's like their eyes glaze over. They don't understand what you're saying.
It's very interesting here. A few years ago, I met a guy called Professor John Joe McFadden, who's Professor of Molecular Biology at Surrey University, and I've now been working my way through his books. And his latest book, he's actually written with Professor Jim Al-Khalili, who is a quantum physicist. And in this book, they are discussing the way in which the only way certain things that happen at the molecular level within the human body and within the bodies and within plants can be explained using quantum physics. Quantum physics, the really weird parts of quantum physics. For instance, photosynthesis without quantum effects could not happen. It implies something called quantum tunneling, where objects magically tunnel from one side of, or will literally appear one side of a barrier when it is impossible. But we know this is the case because this is how the sun shines, and I argue with friends of mine who are going on what you believe in is nonsense. I point out to them, how do you think the sun shines? Think about it. Hydrogen gets turned into helium. But hydrogen can only do that by something called fusion, whereby the helium, the hydrogen, the two hydrogen nuclei actually fuse together. But hydrogen nuclei are actually negatively negatively or positively charged, but they share the same charge, which means that scientifically they cannot get close to each other.
That's right.
Yeah, they have to overpower the strong force of quantum physics, and yet they manage it. It's impossible. The only way they can do this again is by quantum tunneling. But you tell that to the guy down the road who probably has his A-level in physics and you go, oh, that's total rubbish. It's not. It's fact. They just don't want to know. Right, I'm thinking that probably, Thomas, it looks like we've probably lost him. I keep sending messages to him, and he said, no worries, I'm not going anywhere for a few hours. So, I mean, I have to finish at 7 o'clock on the dot here, UK time. We could try one more time to get him. What do you think that it's best to do?
Let's see if we can pull him in one more time.
Okay, guys, all very, very strange. Dear has tried quite a few times now to get through to Thomas, and we have totally failed to get through. This is odd beyond words, but we will go with this show as far as we've got, because we think it's important. We also think it's important that you have the sections of Dear and I's confusion initially, but our suspicion that this would take place anyway, and we will post this as normal. We will try and get Thomas back for a future guest and just see if it happens again, which I probably suspect it will. But so be it. We have to keep going on these things. So thanks again for listening, and we will be with you in a few weeks' time with another edition. And to be honest, we have some very, very interesting guests coming through in January, February, and March of next year, including quantum physicists, neurologists, and various other highly qualified individuals who will probably be able to continue the discussion we've just been discussing in the future. So until then, if you're listening to this before Christmas, have a really wonderful Christmas, and if not, I hope 2018 brings you everything you wish in your life. Thank you.